Alright, hi. Today's topic is solving one-step inequalities. Our goal for today is to solve one-step inequalities, and our California standards for today is California Standards 5.0. Now, there's one major vocabulary that you need to make sure that you get down, which is the set notation, okay? And the set notation is not really a vocabulary, it's just kind of like how the numbers are presented when using your inequalities. So this is called the set of, and notice it's in the little weird fancy brackets, x, all numbers x, such that, that's a little, I think that's colon, such that x is less than 6. So x is less than 6. And of course you have to finish it up with that nice fancy bracket as well. Alright, and just a real quick reminder, one-step inequalities is done the same way that you would do one-step equations. So if you remember how to do that, then you're going to do just fine on this. Alright, so let's start you off on this one. So here we have s plus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 5. So first of all, we're going to isolate that variable. So we want s, our goal is to have s on one side, everything else on the other. Okay? So we're going to isolate that variable, so we want s on one side. We're going to do the inverse operation to the constant, which is the plus 3 in this case. And we're going to go ahead and do the inverse operation to both sides. So inverse operation of adding 3 is going to be subtracting 3. If I subtract 3 here, I'm going to have to subtract 3 on this side. And that's what it means to have it on both sides. And that is it goes along with the equality property. So here, s plus 3 minus 3, 3 goes away. So all I have left is s is greater than or equal to negative 5 minus 3. And again, you want to think of it as negative 5 plus negative 3, which will give you negative 8. And so our answer is s is greater than or equal to negative 8. And if they ask you to graph it, make a nice simple graph. Put negative 8 in the middle, put negative 7 right here, put negative 9, and you are looking at negative 8. So we're going to go ahead and put a circle here. And because it has that little equal sign, you get to fill that in. And you're asking about s, which is your answer. All the answers that are larger than 8. So it goes towards the right. All right? Okay, next one. We have negative 5 plus x is less than negative 20. So again, we're going to isolate the variable. We want x alone. Then we're going to use the inverse operation. The inverse operation of this is actually to add 5. If we add 5 on this side of that inequality sign, we're going to have to add 5 here. So now that goes away. We now have x is less than negative 20 plus 5. That's a negative, that's a positive. Integer rules, when you add them together, you're actually subtracting them, which will give us 15. And you're going to take the sign of the larger number, the larger value. So that's going to be a negative. So here we have x is less than negative 15. And we're going to go and graph that. Negative 15 right here, negative 14, negative 16, and x is less than, so first of all, let's look for negative 15. Let's go ahead and draw that circle in right here. And since we don't have that extra line right here, that's going to remain open. That means that negative 15 is not an answer, but anything that is less than is. Alright, let's move on. Okay, so here we have solving subtraction inequalities, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look for the variable, which is a right here. We're going to isolate it by using the inverse operation to the constant, which is minus 3. The inverse operation to this means you're going to add 3 to both sides. That goes away. We have a is greater than, and negative 10 plus 3 is going to give me negative 7. So we're going to go ahead and graph this out. And again, it doesn't have to be a very extensive graph. I would just go ahead and just start off with negative 7 in the middle, negative 6, negative 8. And we're going to go ahead and, on negative 7 right here, we're going to go ahead and do an open circle. And we're looking for all the values that are larger than negative 7, which would make this towards the right. Okay, let's do another one. Here I have negative 12 is less than or equal to x minus 7. Isolate the variable, we want x alone. To do that, we need to do the opposite of subtracting 7. We're going to add 7 here, add 7 here. We now have negative 7 plus 7, that's going to give us 0. We have x on this side. We're going to continue with that. And here we have negative 12 plus 7, and that's going to give us negative 5. Let's go and graph this out. So here I have negative 5, negative 4, and negative 6. So first off, we're going to go ahead and look for negative 5, and we're going to go ahead and draw a circle. And that line tells us that negative 5 is an answer, so we're going to solid dot that. Now, this is red. Negative 5 is less than x, which means x is larger or equal to negative 5. So anything that is x has to be larger than this. So larger basically means towards the right. All right. All right, now comes a little bit of there's a little tricky part right here. And notice that my flow chart, my sequence chart, actually has an extra one that's in purple right here. So let's go ahead and take the first one. So we're going to go ahead and isolate the variable. So we want x on its own. We're going to inverse operations. So if we're multiplying, the inverse of multiply is to divide. So I'm going to divide this by 3 and divide this by 3. Now, here's the part that I want you to read. If you are dividing by a negative, you have to switch the inequality. Since we're dividing by a positive, that doesn't switch. That's all that is. Okay? So since we're dividing by a positive, we don't have to worry about that. That stays the same. We now have x is greater than negative 4. Let's go ahead and graph that as well. Negative 4, negative 3, negative 5. It is an open circle because we don't have a line underneath it. And we're looking for all the values that are larger than negative 4, which goes that way. Now, this one, we are going to go ahead and do the same exact steps. Isolate the variable. We're going to use the inverse operation for both sides. Notice that I'm dividing by a negative 3 to both sides. And that's where this comes in. If it's a negative and we are dividing by a negative, and again, this only happens when we are doing the multiplication or dividing inequalities. It doesn't work for adding or subtracting. So if we are dividing here by negative 3, I am going to have to switch the sign. So now, it looks like this. X, what used to be less than, is now greater than. And here, and that's it. It's just a very quick switch whenever that you are dividing or multiplying by a negative. Notice here, it doesn't switch at all. Graph this. It's 4, 5, and 3. We're going to do an open circle first. We notice that there's a line, so that makes it solid. And we're doing all the values that are larger than 4, so which means it's going towards the right. Okay, now let's go ahead and do solving division inequalities. And we're going to go ahead and isolate the variable. Here we want n alone. Notice that n is being divided by 3. So we're going to undo that. To undo division, we're going to multiply. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and just rewrite it. So I have n over 3. Since I am dividing by 3, the inverse of that would be to multiply by 3. Multiply this by 3. 3 over 3 becomes 1. All you have left is n. n is less than negative 4 times 3, which will make it negative 12. Now, this one again has that special case, but if you noticed, I didn't multiply by a negative, I multiplied by a positive, which means my sign stays the same. Okay, so in this one, you really don't have to worry about that part. Okay, now this one, we do have to worry about it. So I'm going to rewrite. So I have m over negative 2, okay, and then is greater than 3. And I am trying to get rid of this negative 2 here. So I'm going to multiply by negative 2 to both sides. Since I did that, this goes away right here. and all I'm left with is m. But remember, if the number that I am trying to get the inverse operation for is a negative, I now have to switch this from greater than, it is now less than, and 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. And let's go ahead and graph this out as well, which is going to be negative 6, negative 5, negative 7, and that is less than, so we're going to find 6, open circle, no equal sign, which means that's not part of the answer, but it does start somewhere around here, so we're going to go ahead and look for m, which is less than that, and that's this side. And I just remembered I didn't graph this one, so let's graph this one also. So here's negative 12, negative 11, negative 13. You're going to go ahead and graph this. That's going to be a solid circle because it has that line right here. And you're looking for all the values that are less than negative 12, which makes it this side as well. Okay? All right. That's it.